we've got proper intro. We've got Jess with us today, who is you're here in San Diego, right?
Yep, I'm here local in San Diego.
Awesome. So we're both in San Diego here recording today. So gonna get an amazing shared experience here, and I'll step back and kind of let you give a little bit of the story and jump in just kind of whenever needed.
Okay. Well, I'm just thrilled to be at this point in my transformation where I can actually tell my story from a place of groundedness and a solid space, a centered space. I can recall times in the past of telling my story that felt quite incomplete, and just trying to tap into what I'm in while I'm in it has created a whole lot of dysregulation in itself. So I just feel in this moment um, proud, like proud of myself and the journey that I've gone through to get to this point. So that's first and foremost. um, I'd say the transformative journey for me has not been an easy one. It's been pretty brutal in just dealing with my fears and really understanding that it's nothing more than the constraints and programming of my mind, which has been pretty crippling. So when I think back to my story of like what was the moment that actually had me shift and transform, I go into a moment of crisis. It was it was a day like any other day where I just didn't feel okay, and I had a hard time putting my finger on it. Um, but I can say on that day, I was telling people around me, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I couldn't say what I'm not okay about, and I couldn't even say what I needed. Um, But as the day progressed, I became more and more dysregulated. I became more and more out of my body. And I had what doctors would call a psychotic break, which for me was devastating because I grew up in a family. I was actually born into a family in crisis. And my birth in itself kind of blew up my family unit. And my mom was exiled. She was put in a mental institution. And my dad, who was very controlling, took me through a whole journey in my life that I subscribed to. And I think that's what really made the constriction in my mind so challenging. So in that moment of like completely losing everything, like losing my mind, it was actually the moment of grace where I found myself. And that became my journey of like really seeing my life force, um, seeing the value of my life, seeing that I actually do want to live a centered life where there's meaning, where I have meaning in this world, and that I belong here. So I'm getting pretty emotional about it because it's groundbreaking for me, because before that I didn't have a sense of belonging and I didn't feel safe in this world.
How long ago was this big day in your life?
This big day was about 8, 12, 20 months ago. I can like count it by the months. Um, feel like I'm like the 180. 180 was like, 18 months ago, and I'm a little bit past that. And it was definitely like a road to recovery. And inside of inside of that process, and even leading up to that process, was psychedelic-assisted therapy. I didn't realize it prior to my breaking that my heart was already opening because of the medicine. And then as I went through that break, I also went into a Western system that I really didn't feel like I trusted. It was really challenging for me to just kind of let go of all the controls and trust inside of a system that was there for this time, when people are in crisis. And I received a diagnosis in there of complex post-traumatic stress. And so in coming out of that and understanding what I'm dealing with, which I think a lot of us are, just dealing with complex stress, that I went right back to my teacher who was helping with psychedelic-assisted therapy and continued on my journey of opening my heart and grounding my body. And that in itself was probably another 6 months. So I'd say from the time of my psychotic break to feeling like I was stable was about a year. And I think in the world of CPTSD, that's a very accurate time frame for really pulling out of like the neural pathways that were keeping me stuck and creating new neural pathways in my brain, which would allow me to see the world differently.
What was that day like? Was did you recognize that something totally different was going on, and that led you to seeking out your teacher that day, or friends and family specifically, or how did you make it through that one day?
That one day, I was in a dissociative state, so it's hard to even like put the pieces together. It feels very fragmented. But I can say that like looking at those fragments and like completely coming apart, that when I came apart in a way. And now I know it was an incident that happened in my early childhood. So subconsciously, I was reactive. And in my reactive ways, I was like flinging my arms. I was just like, this, you can't do this. You can't control me. And I backlashed with this arm, and this hand hit my wife. And it was in that moment of like completely being out of control that then my out of control is received as a projected aggression, and it's painful. And I saw myself in that moment as like, I crossed the line. I broke everything. Like I broke my main core relationship. I've fallen back into old patterns that look a lot like how my dad treated me. And I just don't want to be this person. So it was abuse. Bottom line, it was like, to me, like the worst of the worst. Like I had nothing left. I had lost everything in that moment. And so in that moment, I mean, we were like commuting with family. So we had two different cars. One car went another direction, and then my wife stayed back with me. I'm sure she was like upset, just like from the whole situation, like what's wrong with my wife. But I was like trying to take off my clothes or any identification of myself. And then I ran away. So I don't know how long I was gone. I know a lot of people were searching for me. In my running away and like just wanting to be gone, I know this is like where a lot of people are when they just, hit the end of the rope. It's like there's no more life for me. And I was really in that mode, like, had I had a weapon, had I had a car where I could be reckless, like I know it would have been the end for me. So in that desperation of like just being out, like I would think I was hiking a mountain, just trying to like get up, like find a cave, get away. And I didn't have my phone on me. I didn't have like my iPhone watch. Like I had chucked anything that would be like any like human identification. And then I was just going, right? So like my body is just like processing and working out and being like, there really is nowhere to go. Like I'm the only thing left that there is to deal with. And I think it was in that moment that I saw my life force. It was in that moment that I saw the value. And that my life isn't something to be thrown away or disregarded or controlled. And then this hummingbird came. And the hummingbird to me is like a totem of my mother, and always a sweet, sweet guide and a really high frequency. And I just followed the hummingbird. I knew to trust. All I could trust in this whole world was this hummingbird. So I followed the hummingbird. Luckily, at that point, I had witnessed my value. I had found myself. So then I walked down the mountain and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going back to my life, but I don't even know where I am. I don't know where my family is. I don't have any way to get a hold of them. So literally I'm lost. And I wandered, and then luckily my sons, driving in one car together, who had been out searching for me, they found me. They like pulled up on the side of the road and they were like, what's going on? Where are you going? And I got in the car, and it was, just an extremely awkward day where I ended up going to my son's house. I mean, my wife really was like not wanting to be in a relationship with me any longer. So it really, was the end of my marriage and living in my home. And so I moved to my son's house, and then it was actually the end of 2022, moving into 2023. So it was like New Year's Day after that. And I spent a couple days on my own, just trying to sort through my own emotions. And I ended up calling a psychiatrist that I had worked with in the past. And he identified for me that I was in crisis. He was like, you can't just come in for a visit. You need treatment. And so it was in that I just took a deep breath, and I had so many fears around like a Western medical system. I had associated all of that with my mother, and I had really I had ostracized my mother, exiled her, and I had never listened to her side of the story. So me stepping into that hospital setting and being in her shoes brought me into a different reality, one where I could see the stories of both of my parents, and I could understand how I had created this construct in my mind that was totally abandoning half of who I am by abandoning my mother. And when I listened to my mother, she told me the story of grief. She had lost my sister prior to my birth. So then my birth was like a remembering of her loss. She had also lost her mother to breast cancer like 2 years before that, and hadn't resolved it. Like she was not there for the funeral. She had no closure around that loss. And in that moment of bringing in another daughter and also feeling the loss of her daughter and her mother, she wasn't well. She was also dysregulated, unstable, and unable to cope. So I had a whole lot of compassion for the first time about her journey. And then realizing that because she wasn't stable, she lost her children again, and what that was like for her. So I took a lot of time to start listening and getting the full picture and kind of like redesigning who I am from the bottom up, from like the start of my life until who I am now.
Wow. I appreciate you taking us through that journey. I have to interject and say the way the camera is on you and the light coming through the window, you are so angelic right now.
I'm seeing that like
It's incredible. And telling that story, it was a little mesmerizing just how angelic you look, and just wanted to call that out. Um,
yeah.
but
Wow. Yeah, that is, we got some light rays, don't we?
thank you for that. um, uh, oh, I didn't mean move. That was awesome. So then after getting treatment, how did that lead back into any of the psychedelic assisted therapy, and what does that look like for you?
Mm. Well, like I had said, I didn't understand the power of the medicine. I was having challenges in all relationships in my life with my children and my wife. I was constantly in this pattern in my dysregulated state of running. So I was really good at like running and then hyper focusing, running and then hyper focusing. And that pattern had me already in contact with my medicine woman because what I didn't know is that she was already very connected to us through a friendship. She actually helped with my, well, before my wife and I were married, she assisted with the choosing of my wedding ring. She helped me organize our wedding. She brought in our whole family to host our family in her space. She hosted our reception. And so she, according to my children, she was like a godmother or someone like an auntie, someone who was very close. And according to me and my wife, she was just like a trusted confidant or a sister or a wise friend. Um, and so she was the one that we went to when we were having these relationship breakdowns because of my habitual behavior. And she talked to my wife, like saying, it's time. I've never invited you into medicine work because you haven't called for it, but it sounds like you're actually calling and asking. So for the first time, she let us know that she was a medicine woman. And we sat with her and journeyed with her independently and then as a couple. And I didn't realize the impact of that heart opening. I knew that we were in the work. I knew that we were like pulling up things from the past and looking at them differently. And we were also in therapy alongside with the medicine. So like we were deep in the work, but there was like this core of myself that I couldn't get to because I was so stuck in the victimization and projecting my victimization on others that then that's what led to the crisis. So it was only after going through the full treatment and really being separated from this teacher that I came out and I was like, I know that this is my path. I called her and I was like, I want to work with you. It's time to like go deep. I'm ready to get to the core of my trauma. Like what happened, and obviously it's like buried in my unconscious because my early childhood development was the traumatic time. So there's no like memory that I can access. So she agreed. She agreed to work with me, and we like created intentions for a 6 month process, and through that, I kept journey notes, and we just worked intensely week over week, and then I wove her work in with somatic therapy, and also me getting stable by going back to work and working with children, which is where I feel like I belong the most.
Which medicine were you working with? What
Originally,
medicines?
we were working with MDMA
Okay.
in the heart opening experience. We also work with grandfather medicine, and so we were able to go with our conscious community, a circle that this sister holds together, to Peru, and so in going to Peru last year with my community, I was able to do what's called a double Andean ceremony in going to grandfather medicine first, and then increasing the frequency with grandmother medicine or ayahuasca, and then back down to grandfather. That journey, um, it's hard to put words on. I know that's what we're here for, is to like talk about this journey. But what I can say is I definitely got to like see the angel that I am in the high frequency, and then I also got to really get down to the very core of the trauma, which is very much laid in my lineage of women being suppressed and controlled. And I was able to, inside of that journey, go deep in my womb, find where the where like it was like the a string or a line or a lineage, and I was able to get to that like core of what felt like I was bleeding out. I was really literally losing my life force through that wound. And so in that journey, I was able to see it and heal it and start moving forward from that point.
That is something that I feel like I didn't understand for most of my life and early on in medicine journeys, but I feel like has been growing in understanding recently is the impact of generational stuff, and kind of the impact of the lineage and and just kind of generational, um, the good, the bad, the ugly, and seeing, for me specifically, seeing kind of the roles that in this life various generations play from our our early youth to childhood and early adulthood, and kind of the grandmother grandfather roles, and really being able to unpack that. One thing that I think is just kind of continuously interests me in kind of growing that understanding is just past generations and future generations. Sometimes they call it, 7 generations back, 7 generations future. I'm just curious if you want to unpack that a little bit, and just kind of thoughts around how the generations impact each other, and why we might carry some of that, some of that stuff from our parents, our grandparents, and even 7 generations back, how and why we carry that, and how that might translate onto our future generations, and kind of what have you uncovered on that side of things?
Yeah, it's really been fascinating. The first thing that I started to uncover was when I was in treatment. in the Western system, and it was a women's treatment center. And I would say the core of us had the same victimization mentality and a fear of being controlled by a dominant force. And as we were sharing our stories, the distinction between mine and theirs was obvious, where I was pointing at trauma that had happened in my lifetime, and many, many, many were pointing at trauma that they couldn't see in this lifetime. Many people in the in that space had a sweet life, like a lot of us in San Diego do. Kind of like the silver spoon life, or a bubble has been created around them so that they don't see the trauma that they've come from. And these stories that were coming out that have been hidden and shushed and tabooed were actually the stories that were hurting them. And in that, I had like so much similarity with this lifetime where I had exiled my mom, where I had shut her out, where I wasn't listening. And there was this story that hadn't been seen or heard that was actually pointing to my core wound, which was grief and separation. And so when I got to that of like control didn't allow me to process grief and separation, I could see then like where my boundaries were, or where the parameters were for me to do my work. Because that pointing to then showed me, oh, this was my mother's grief with her daughter and her mother. And then as I was listening to my mother speak, she would tell the story of her mother and her trauma, and then she would go into her grandmother. So I could get like 4 generations from myself to start seeing like, oh, this is just carried on. And it's also from a deeper control. So then that shows me like I'm in the highest, most aligned timeline now, and they are actually supporting my evolution. So then why, when I look out in the world, do I see my daughters recreating their pattern? Oh, it's because I haven't stepped up to my highest frequency to allow my daughters to move up from there. And I could see that I had created a trap. And similarly, my mother had created a trap. Like we all do that with this perpetual loop that we create. And until I chose to get out, that then my daughters weren't free. And in witnessing that of like the generations before and the generations back, I got to see and witness as I healed my daughters, like they lost the restraint or the constraint around the story. And the story is the one of victimization. And all of a sudden I saw them become self-liberated. I have an oldest daughter who's actually not birthed through me. I raised her. And so she has her own parallel story of abandonment and exile, her mom, and separation and suffering. And she had MS, or still has MS, that was diagnosed a few years ago. And in that story of MS and victimization, it's like, well, I'm not going to be a mother. And through my healing, I witnessed her say, I actually would like to be a mother. And I actually see hope in our world now. And I actually see a place where I could move forward and have a child. And so she went through all these changes in order to be ready, and then spoke to the universe so clearly, if it is my time, I'm ready now. And within a week, she was pregnant. And then when I was sitting in another journey last summer, that child connected with me. And this weekend, I was able to be with him and see the miracle in me doing my work, that my daughter is free and now he's here. And I just see like there will be no other way. There would be no other way than for me to have gone through the most difficult journey of my life to free myself and free everyone. And it's this understanding now of like choosing to go from a path of suffering into a path of freedom.
What do you think it is about, and it could be any medicine that you've worked with, but what do you think it is about the medicine that allows us to simply adjust our perspective on reality? Because that's a lot of what I've found too. Is it, the really the world is the same as it was before. However, you're looking at it with a just a different lens. And it could be a 180 lens. It could be, a 3-degree shift, but everything then looks just, either slightly different or radically different. And I've, I've got my own theories throughout my journeys, but curious what you think is kind of what is in the fabric of the medicine that allows us to change our reality like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember my teacher talking to me about opening my heart. And I didn't understand that that's what the medicine is doing, is opening my heart. And I was like, even at age 6, I was like writing lyrics and singing songs and noticing like, why are all the songs about love? Like I don't understand love, and I don't understand like people talking about this concept in love. Every love story that I had seen up until that point in my life was very painful. So I was like, love is dumb. And I was like really shut down, like only if it was transactional and only if it like made sense, and like I would work with it, but it wasn't a frequency that I could hold without creating like some sort of suffocation on it. And what I can see now is that in my life journey that there was a real separation. And I work with children and create things in the 3D that would explain theoretical concepts in practical form. And so what I picture is one of those cyclones. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you get like 2-liter bottles, and there's one little piece, like a cylinder, that holds the 2-liter bottles together, so that when you like stir the bottles, you see 2 cyclones going. And it's how you can see how the universe works inside of being centered. So what I could see for myself is that I didn't I didn't have any flow through my heart space. If the heart space were that cylinder that then is like the conduit between the polarities, the north and the south, it's like I had the polarities, and maybe I could mix both sides, but there was never a connection. There was never like a flow through. And therefore, my reality was disconnected or disjointed. And I could have like aspects of higher frequencies, or I could have aspects of low frequencies, but I didn't understand how low and high were connected. Like I couldn't see that a coin had a heads and a tails. Or I could only see that it had a head, or I could only see that it had a tail, but I didn't see like the whole coin, that it's like it's one. And if I look at the universe like that, I can now see that it's one, that it's not disjointed. And the way to actually experience the fullness of the universe that resides within me is to open that channel, is to, unconsciously or consciously open the channel, which only resides in the heart and which allows the highest frequency of love to flow through. And when I open that channel, and now I sit in that practice daily of centering and keeping that heart space open, then I can operate from that space that allows me to be connected with everything. And as long as I can keep myself out of the way, my perceptions, my judgments, my all the things that are going on in my brain, life feels very free. And there's so much joy being expressed through me and by me and for me, just by simply allowing myself to stay open.
What are some of those practices that you have today to help keep that center of balance and keep that cylinder open and keep from being disjointed?
Yeah, today I do a lot of regulation practices throughout the day. So noticing in breath and out breath, similar to yoga. I start my day in meditation. Meditation allows me, especially coming right from a sleep state, I'm nice and awake and ready to go into my day, but rather than going, I sit in meditation. So that's the first time where I'm able to just allow my heart to be open. And in my meditation, I can also see like my thoughts are already running their program. I just have a right to choose whether or not to focus on that. And so I'm in the practice of allowing the thoughts to do their thing, just like clouds floating by. Were you going to say something?
Do you meditate just in silence, or do you have a guided meditation that you lean on?
I meditate in silence. I actually practice transcendental meditation, and I've been practicing for about seven years now. That was probably my first step into transformation. It was learning transcendental meditation and just holding that practice twice a day, which I still continue to do today.
That's awesome. Um, One thing that I'm curious to get your take on, because I think it relates to your metaphor of the high frequency and the low frequency, or just kind of the balance between the yin and the yang, or the opposing forces. And you've got the east and the west, and we you know draw metaphors on that in so many ways: the condor and the eagle, the return of the bird tribes, and you know Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, Eastern culture, Western culture. We've kind of drawn these two labels on it, and really curious on your take on how those play together, and um, maybe also just kind of curious, because I feel like this is a common thread with just kind of people who have started to enter that Eastern medicine and Eastern culture, is a little bit of a distrust with the Western side of it, and I think you kind of alluded to that early on, of just kind of that distrust with the Western system, the Western medicine, and just want to get your take on, you know, where might that come from, and then how do the East versus West kind of play together, and what does that balance and equilibrium look like in your opinion?
Yeah. Wow. What a great question. Um, I've actually written a children's book about this because it's so fascinating to me to watch our human history through evolution as we evolved from maybe one tribe into many, and have you know broadened our perspectives to be all the way around the globe. And I know there's just like so much controversy around holding the old wisdom and letting go and moving forward. Um, so to land in California, USA, and be very much a part of the Western system, I really did wholly subscribe to it as a child. And it was only when I started birthing children and getting into my own personal intuition that I threw the Western system out. I remember being pregnant quite young and seeing an epidural needle. I went to a class and like the needle was like that long and they explained how they would be doing it. And I was just like a flat no, like that won't be happening to my body. And that was the first like stepping out and noticing that I don't subscribe to what I'm being told. And I went a whole different route. And my my birth process with the three children that I birthed allowed me to really step deeply into my body and trust my body and remember that my body knows how to do this on its own. And the more I could allow and get out of the way, the more beautiful the experience was. And then after having natural childbirth and starting to raise them, um, I really felt inadequate because I hadn't been parented by a mother, and I felt like I didn't have that to offer. And so I got into early childhood philosophy and I did a lot of research, and those philosophies that I resonated with were of Eastern descent. So I found myself in a Montessori school, um, raising my children in a what I felt like a natural way of allowing them to progress as they were naturally progressing, rather than pushing them according to grades and levels. I found myself in a different world. I'm like in this Western society, but I don't really belong. I'm kind of carving my own path. It doesn't really fit, and I'm like with the weirdos or the misfits, off in left field. And then even deeper than that, I would gravitate to the neurodivergent children, and I created programs for them to be able to be in school with us and to create inclusive classrooms. So I have like this deep rooted sense of us being inclusive, of us all being one, of nobody being cast out or being left out, of understanding that each of us have unique qualities to offer and perspectives to bring. So then as I got into the medicine work, it was such a reflection of the tribes, of seeing how we've come out of this oneness to then go gather wisdom from all these different places and aspects and cultures and values, and be able to now, with our gift of technology, bridge those together and come back into oneness now. And so in like just in being in the Western system and having more of an Eastern philosophy, I finally started to come to peace with it. And now I hold a practice in myself with all of my parts, in my relationships, and in my work of what's called peace circles. And it's really allowing different aspects to come to a conversation and share what it's like from this perspective and that perspective, and then decide, now that we have these perspectives, how do we agree to move forward together? And that is just like fundamentally a whole new world when I can look at any breakdown in communication, any breakdown in a relationship, and know that if both people are willing, that the repair is possible and available, and that we can build from every new block that we create together. We literally are building a new world that is fully connected with this wisdom that we have now.
I am. That is going to be the probably the one part that I go and rewatch 5 times. I just took a bunch of good notes as you were talking on that. Thank you for unpacking that a little bit. Yeah, it's something that I have. I don't want to say struggled with, but have kind of dealt with. And I would say I would qualify it as grief. Grief um, during moments of meditation on the ancient wisdoms and Eastern cultures, and the idea of those disseminating and being lost, kind of that idea notion that those are being lost, and we're alongside the other side of the coin, in that we're evolving, and how are we bringing those wisdoms with us and evolving them to kind of the, almost that idea of letting go, of letting go of, hey, it's okay that this is happening, and just kind of witnessing what the evolution is looking like. And some of the perspectives that you put on it, I think are really wonderful there, that resonate with me and my journey. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's complex.
Um, One thing that I want to have you do is, and maybe we can use this to kind of lead into a close. But if you had kind of an encouragement words, or encouragement, prayers and meditation for yourself, and maybe this could be, prayers and encouragement for yourself 2 years ago, for yourself 5-7 years ago, and then for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years, what would those prayers and encouragement be?
My prayers and encouragement for myself in the past is, it's okay to be in the darkness. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be in the struggle. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to feel all of the feelings, and that no feelings, no emotions are bad, and that no judgment of any of it is necessary or warranted. My prayers and intentions for more recent me is keep doing the thing. Keep staying on the road. Keep living. Keep choosing each day to opt in. Keep choosing each day to do the difficult, to have the hard conversations, to address things rather than to be in avoidance, to stand in empowerment rather than feel disempowered, and to choose that consciously. My prayers and my intentions for my future, from my future self, is to rock on, to know that I and we are all in the right place right now, that we never were off track, that we never fell apart, we never separated, that was part of the learning and part of the process. And now, in this point of view, having a new perspective on all of it, my prayer is to continue on this work, continue to shine, continue working with the planet and all of the planets around us that continuously shift and change and allow us to keep evolving. This is my prayer and intention.
I received that. Thank you. That was selfish of me. I really wanted to receive a prayer, so I baited you.
You got it.
But no, I appreciate that. That is beautiful. I deeply received that today as well. So, wow. Deep breaths. Well, I hope you had fun sharing today.
These rays of light, they're like, we're not stopping. We're here. Shining
so awesome.
through.
I love it. I'm actually back here at the Casa, where we met up, and have actually kind of created my own little. This is my first run through the studio here that I set up. So I've got the light coming in the windows as well. I've got a new webcam set up, so I've been eager to kind of run through it on an interview here, or some content. And yeah, this is awesome. And yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, we got a perfect tandem on the light rays coming in.
That's really sweet. I'm honored to be the guest for this one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to have you on the platform. Always deep gratitude for anybody that comes on and shares this level of vulnerability and taps into their side of humanity. I've done a couple of these myself, and it's a journey reliving it, and it's a journey going through that and processing and externalizing that. It's tough to put into words a lot of the time, and it's for me it always feels like a little bit of pressure to have to put it into words. And it's by the end of a session going, kind of externalizing it always feels good. And your story is lovely and angelic,
Mm-hmm.
and beautiful. So I am, again, deep gratitude for sharing. Anything else that you want to share with our community that you feel called, that's on your heart today?
Other than grateful for sharing, I just want to continually be open for anyone who's just in it. If there's any way that I can support, I'm happy to be a listening ear, or a landline, or a space for listening.
Awesome. We'll definitely throw in any show notes on any ways that anyone can, if they want to, get in touch with you, if they're inspired or want to touch base. I definitely want to get the children's book that you mentioned, for my son and my new daughter. Where can we find that? Where can I go get that?
Well, I just put it into a really easy presentation, so I can go ahead and send you the link to that presentation that'll allow
Okay.
you to just flip through it page by page. And soon I'll have it published, so we can talk about that next book for your hands down the road.
Yes,
But
absolutely. Okay,
yeah, I've
perfect.
got the presentation ready.
Perfect. Then yeah, and I manifest publishing and seamless process there for you, and amazing blessings there. We'll absolutely share that with the community once it's published, and I'm sure everyone's going to come support there.
Yay. Getting in the practice of the work.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much. I know this is a interesting way to start the day, but hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll stay connected. We'll stay in touch, and I'll let you know when we go live with this, and include anything that you want in the show notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah. All right, Jess. Talk to you soon.